Now give us a realistic timeline. You said 1 to 2 is the longest, 2 to 3, then 3 to 4 tipping point. Is this 5-year, 10-year run? What does this look like?
Yeah. So we have 5 years to freedom. And the concept of 5 years to freedom is every single year we're going to buy a property and we're going to rinse and repeat the same situation. Now we are going to use the best and fastest way to scale is assuming that you use those tax advantages, bonus depreciate, materially participate. It puts a lot more money in your pocket, and it's a massive amount of leverage to accelerate. However, it doesn't, if I do 5 years to freedom and my goal is to have one property every single year for 5 years, I might have an 18-month gap between 1 and 2. I might have a 24-month gap between 1 and 2. And then the next gap between 2 and 3 might be 18 months. And then 3 to 4 might be 8 months, right? And then 6 months or 3 months, right? All of a sudden it starts to go faster toward the end. So you have to say, okay, what do I want this portfolio to look like? Am I okay? What if it's not one property every single year for 5 years? What if it's one property every year for every other year for 10 years, right? Are we okay with that? Does that work for us? And if the answer is yeah, you go after it. You just are kind of putting together your time horizon. And here's how you can do it.
Okay.
This is going to take just a minute, so we might get a little long-winded. But let's say I buy a $500,000 property, and I get my cash flow, I get my appreciation, I get my note pay down, and I get my tax advantages, right? So cash flow and tax advantages stay in my pocket. Note pay down, appreciation stay in the property, and I don't realize that until I sell it. What stays in my pocket, then I can use to go buy property number 2. So if I buy, and I'm just going to go quickly through the numbers, $500,000 property, I put $100,000 in, okay? And that $100,000 is going to get me into that $500,000 property, and then I get 5% appreciation. So I got $25,000 in equity staying in the property. I can't touch that. I get about $5,000 in note pay down, stays in the property. So I got a nice 30% return baked into just the property every single year. And then I get cash flow. Let's say I only get 5% cash on cash return. So I have $5,000 in my pocket that stays. I can use that. I can throw that in my investment bank account. So when I go start property number 2, now I've got $5,000 sitting in that investment bank account. Where you can accelerate it is to say, okay, based on your average cost segregation study that's going to come out, it's going to be between 25 and 35% of the acquisition cost in most cases on single family homes. It's not, it very much depends, but it's going to be somewhere close to that on single family homes. Let's say it's on the low side and it's 25% of the $500,000. So I'm going to get a write-off that I get to take to the IRS of $125,000. That write-off, for those of the people that are in that 30% tax bracket, you're keeping $40,000 that you don't have to pay the IRS from buying that property. So that $40,000, if you've already paid it, you get it back. If you haven't paid it, it stays in your pocket. So it's money you would already pay, assuming you're making more than $125,000, right? You're going to get that $125,000 write-off is going to reduce your taxes by $40,000-ish, right? Wow. So now on property number 2, I've got the $5,000 that I got from cash flow, and I got the $40,000 that I didn't have to pay Uncle Sam by buying that property. So now, on property number 2, instead of having to save up the whole $100,000, I've got $45,000 sitting there. So I have to figure out how to save up $55,000. So if you're in that scenario, you have to say, okay, how long is it going to take me to save up the $55,000? Right? Do I have it available? Do I have to, disposable income that I can start to put into my investment bank account so that I can go rinse or repeat? That might be 18 months from now. Maybe it's 2 years for you to save up that $55,000. And then I rinse and repeat and I do it again. And then the next time I do it, same scenario. Now I've got the tax savings, and I've got 2 properties producing. Property 1 also, now you have to remember these properties typically take about 12 to 18 months to hit their kind of optimize and maximize. And so normally we're looking for more than a 5% cash on cash return by the time we optimize and maximize these properties. So now let's just assume in our regular scenario that we're getting a 10% cash on cash return now that we're optimized on property number 1. So now for property number 2 to 3, I have the same tax savings. Let's assume I save 40. I bought the exact same rinse or repeat. I got 40 grand in my tax savings on my investment account. I got 5K from cash flow from property number 2, so I'm at 45K, and now I've got 10K from property number 1 that I can go put back into that property, right? And so now I've got 55K instead of 45. So now instead of saving up 55, I need to come up with 45. I rinse or repeat, and it's going to keep going down. And then so by now, property number 3, I'm going to be coming in. I've got 10,000, 10,000, 5,000. So I got 25,000 plus my 40. So now I got 65K. Now I only have to come up with 35, right? So you get to reduce the amount you're coming up with every single time. If you're in a position where it took you 18 months to save up from 1 to 2 to save up the 55K, then all of a sudden the next one might take me 12 months, might take me 8 months, whatever it is. And you start to reduce that timeline between each of those properties. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. I'm totally with you. What about someone that wants to just go ahead and get 2 properties? Let's just go ahead and get 2.
Yeah.
The combo deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If it's instead that I can have 2 already doing that, they can cost seg both out of and pull stuff from. Do people ever do that?
Yeah, if they have the capital, 100%. And so one of the biggest questions is somebody with a decent amount of capital to start with that can buy multiple properties. They say, should I buy 1 property or 2 properties? Ideally, 1 property is easier, right? If you can get the same returns on 1 bigger property in a bigger and better market, a lot of times that's the play. Not always though. You might be better off, and you might have, you might be wanting to get into a certain market and you have X amount of dollars to place. This happens all the time. Somebody's like, I want to have a property here, and they're trying to place more than that market really will bear. So you might be in some markets, it's hard to place $1 million. Other markets, you can't even play unless you have $1 million, right? And so it's very dependent on the market itself. And if you're very specific about the market, many times you got to buy multiple smaller properties. But if you're not, and you're open to bigger and better properties, a lot of times your opportunity, because it's easier to take care of 1 roof, it's easier to have 1 furnace to deal with, if something goes wrong. Like your capital expenses on 1 property, it's just less things that can go wrong, less things that can happen. And so, there's fewer guests that you're dealing with. And so if I can maximize my dollars and I have the revenue potential and it's going to meet my property goals, it's easier to place it in 1 big property versus 2 smaller ones.
Okay.